one thing is that we take a very different stance than everybody else in the coaching world around confidentiality. You use the word transparency, but I think you were alluding to also maybe
Yes.
confidentiality. And the reason why is
I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest. Diane Sweeney is a trailblazer in the world of education. She pioneered the idea of student centered coaching, moving away from the idea of a deficit mindset or focusing on teachers and actions that they need to take to improve, and instead focused on the students in the classroom, which we always aspire to do a better job of. Today's conversation will dive deep into her work, how she came up with this model, and how to actually put it into practice in your own school. All right, Diane Sweeney, thank you so much for being with us today on the Minds That Move podcast. The first question that I have that our listeners are eager to hear is just your model of coaching is something that's so unique and has been so helpful to so many people, that student centered approach. Can you just describe for us what it is and how you really put it in place in schools?
yeah, our approach puts equal emphasis, I'd say, on three things that I think sometimes get isolated in coaching frameworks. And we like to balance across ensuring that coaching makes an impact on student learning. So a lot of our work is very focused on standards and the academic goals we have for students. K 12, no matter what the class is, it's academically focused. We always want to support instruction. We always want to support great tier one instruction specifically. And then it really is always best if we can make it feel like a partnership and ensure that the coaching work we're doing builds trust with teachers. So I think we're a little bit unique in having equal emphasis on all three of those things: the student learning, the instruction, and the partnership. Because when I started as a coach, and historically coaching has been very much focused just only on the instructional practice and didn't necessarily take into account what do we want to see happen with our student learning and ensuring it's a partnership. So those three things are important to us.
Yeah, and I wonder, just from your own personal lens, from when you were a literacy coach in the Denver Public Schools, how your own evolution informed the model that you really pioneered, and how that helped to form that vision.
Yes. I mean, you're going way back now, but my first job being a literacy coach in Denver Public Schools was a very rude wake up call, I'd say. I found that one time I got a letter from a teacher that said, please don't ever come back to my classroom again. I found that as a coach, I was very easily working with certain teachers, my friends, and having a very hard time connecting with a whole lot of other teachers. And, it wasn't a personality thing, I think. I think it came down to the moves I was making as a coach. And I think I was going into that work really thinking about my job being to assess how teaching is going in a classroom and kind of tell teachers how to do a better job. And I didn't know any better. And it created a lot of collateral damage, I'd say, because I wasn't necessarily framing any of my work at the time around student learning. And I remember I was just always trying to design ways for teachers to learn and grow, which is great. But I was always thinking just about the teacher, teacher, teacher. And I remember I had a meeting once with a friend who was at the district office, and she said, Diane, what about the kids? And I was like, oh, I wasn't really thinking about them very much. Kind of went home, drove home in my little Toyota Camry, and I was like, oh my gosh, I really lost sight of what matters. And that's when I started looking at all of my work with that lens of, am I thinking about students here? And then I just started redoing everything I did as a coach to make sure nobody ever asked me that question again. And that's kind of what led to this work. And it really did start in Denver Public Schools.
And the teacher who wrote, "Please don't come back to my classroom," if you were to do it with this model, do you think that it would work effectively, or was it just a matter of the trust or the credibility or the respect being a newer teacher or newer literacy coach, or was it the model and how you were approaching that teacher?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think I think I just made this teacher feel like I was bossing him around, and we had a great relationship. That's the funny thing. We had a lot of friendly interactions. And so if I had really thought with him about what do you really want he was a fourth grade teacher, what do you really want your students to be doing as writers? I think I would have had a whole different our coaching relationship would have been entirely different than it turned out to be, which was me going in and saying, "Oh my gosh, this classroom's a disaster." I wouldn't say that out loud, but that's what was going on in my head. So I do think the framework would have made an incredible difference if I had had that in my back pocket at the time and I wasn't going in. I was really going in just trying to fix teachers. I was going in looking to see what was wrong and fix it and make it right. And I always joke that he had a wife that could boss him around. He didn't need me doing that too.
Right. Yeah, when I was an instructional coach, we used to have the phrase of our job was to hold a mirror to teachers, and I don't think that's right
Uh-huh.
after having been in the position for a while, then moving into principalship. I don't think it's holding a mirror to them and saying, "This is who you are, this is what you do," because they feel that judgment, and nobody wants it.
Yes,
Everyone wants to learn and grow, but nobody wants to feel judgment. And so I think that's why
absolutely.
your approach is so empowering because it's amplifying what's happening in the classroom, and everyone wants their kids to be better, and you're a piece of that puzzle.
I agree. Yeah, I love the way you said that. We go in with that asset-based stance. Every teacher wants their kids to grow, so what an amazing opportunity to build on that. That's what gets them up in the morning.
Yeah. So walk me through what a typical coaching cycle would look like, maybe for an elementary school.
Yeah, we always want to be student centered, obviously, in our work. So we start with a goal that's based on the standards. So students will solve two-step equations. Students will learn how to write a strong thesis statement or read and annotate text. So you can hear the examples I'm giving are very academically focused, like I mentioned. That goal always then needs to be clear. We really land on the research of teacher clarity. That's the visible learning research,
Mm,
and we know the clearer a teacher is, the more students achieve, and that it has a very high effect size. So our second big move we make is to unpack that goal into a very clear success criteria. At the end of this cycle, what will the students walk away knowing and doing? That is such a robust conversation because it's just like everything starts ticking in and then it ticks into place, but then it also creates a roadmap for the coach and teacher to follow. And by the way, this could happen with a team or an individual or a pair. We always want to catch some baseline data. Okay, if our work is on writing, reading a text, annotating it, and writing a summary. That's kind of a boring example, but let's have them read a text, annotate it, and write a summary at the beginning of our cycle so we can capture some formative assessment data to see where are they right now. And then we co-plan and we co-teach. That's typically weekly, a few times a week in the classroom, one time a week with a pretty intentional co-planning session where we always use student evidence that we gathered in the classroom. So what writing did the students do today, or how did they tackle a text? Those sorts of things. And then we want to post assess at the end and we want to know, how did the kids grow? So let's throw another text at them. Let's annotate it. Let's write a summary. And then how did the teacher grow? What instructional practices that were being, practiced together through that coaching cycle, through the work the coach does in the classroom primarily? How did that then land with the teacher? And what are they feeling confident doing when that coaching cycle wraps up? So that's kind of how we spin ourselves through a coaching cycle. The thing that's unique, I think, is that goal that's rooted in the standards, because right there we start very student centered.
yeah, and nowadays with just like the workload on teachers, there has been in the last several years, and even more so than ever, a push for de-implementation. I know that Peter DeWitt's written about it, even John
Yes.
Hattie in 2024. Michael Fullen kind of initiated that years ago, the idea that we always put something else on teachers' plates without ever taking anything off. And in my experience, although I don't think it's true, sometimes teachers can feel like this is one more thing. How do you avoid, that approach or that mindset that teachers might bring to a coaching cycle?
Well, we always want we want to embed into the normal work teachers are doing, which is in a way de-implementation. And we want to so it's that unit they're teaching anyway. So a fun move some coaches make is they'll say, "What's your least favorite unit to teach?" I hate poetry, or I dread the fractions unit, or whatever it is. What if we did that one together? It's very low key. There's no we don't recommend for a principal to tell everybody in a school, you all have to do a coaching cycle. We like coaching cycles to be really rooted in teacher agency. Now, we want a principal to be saying coaching cycles matter, and I can't imagine you wouldn't do a coaching cycle, but that's
Mm.
very different than you all have to do a coaching cycle. And so then there's a lot of ways we work with coaches to schedule so that they provide a ton of choice for teachers. And the drivers for really deep engagement are having that autonomy, that purpose, that ability to say, I'm doing this because I need this right now. Meanwhile, there's a lot of work that happens in a school to build a culture for coaching. But we never want to see a principal say all the struggling teachers should be coached, because
Mhm.
that then turns a coach into a remediation technique. And then who else is going to want to work with that coach if that coach is only working with everyone knows who's struggling in a school, and that just tarnishes the coach as something to avoid. We also try to avoid having coaches only work with brand new to the profession teachers, unless it's like part of a mentoring system or induction program. But that then says, I'm a more experienced teacher. Oh, good. I don't need to think about coaching. So we work a lot with coaches to have a variety of teachers on their caseload. Have that teacher of the year, that nationally board certified teacher in a cycle. Have a new teacher in a cycle. Have a team in a cycle. So we think really about this in a very kind of slow build where we pull people in when it makes sense for them.
And how do I love that idea of that loose and tight. F-
Hmm.
Oftentimes, the teachers who are struggling, though, are struggling because they're the least open to seeking out
Yeah.
external feedback. Um, and so, how do you make it where the people that need to be growing are growing without making it feel like this is this top down thing? Is that the role of the principal at that point, or is there a way to kind of ease them into it?
I think a principal certainly can have conversations with teachers who are struggling and say, we have a lot of ways to get support in the school, and coaching is one of them. And I would like to see you consider, and hopefully I will follow up with you and make that happen. I think a little pressure is always healthy. That goes back to Michael Fullen's work. And also I think that somebody who isn't stepping into coaching, it would be incumbent upon us to ask why. Why haven't you joined into coaching work? What? And so we recommend we keep a status of the faculty with the coaches we support in districts. And that's like everyone in a school and what have they engaged in, what have they not engaged in, so we can be very data based and data driven. Where are their holes? Who is not engaging? Let's support them and figure out how to bring them into this work. And because we really do see coaching as being for everyone, but that doesn't mean everyone's going to be lined up at the coach's door ready for a cycle. It means we're going to have to strategically pull people in, and everyone is everyone. But it doesn't mean everyone does the same thing at the same time. And so we
Mhm.
do have to really be intentional about collecting data so we know, gosh, that second grade team has really shunned the coach. Okay, so why?
Mm.
Let's talk. The principal may talk to them and say, and it may be that they're just like, oh, I thought coaching was for new people. We're not new. Or there could be so many reasons why people aren't stepping into the work. So we just sort of think about it like that.
Yeah, and what is the principal's role in establishing the culture that allows a coach to be successful in a school?
Yeah, I'll go back to Michael Fullen's work here. We really lean on his idea of pressure and support. And that is this idea that there healthy change only happens when there's healthy pressure, meaning high expectations of vision. And by vision, I mean a clear vision around instruction. Principals, in my opinion, who are strong instructional leaders leave no questions among their staff about what do classrooms and what does learning look like here in this school? What should be consistent across the school regarding the instruction we deliver day in and day out. So that's on the principal side, and that's all healthy pressure, clarity on expectations, a clear vision for instruction, and then I'd say some accountability in that, right? So if this is what we expect, principals in classrooms, they're keeping an eye in, that saying you always hear, inspect what you expect, but they're always looking to see, is what I'm seeing in classrooms lining up with what I hope to see in classrooms. It doesn't, it's not necessarily obvious, but those actions support coaching like in incredible ways, because once that clarity is there, then then the coach can help with the support side of the pressure and support, and they can then make sure teachers feel supported to meet the expectations of principals putting out there. And so we really work with teams of principals and coaches together a lot. We'll often bring them in the room together and have them map out. Sometimes it's just a Venn diagram. How do you provide pressure? How are you going to get into classrooms? And how do you provide support? How's the coach going to tap into that? That also helps define, it separates that coaching from evaluation, and it also helps define the role of the coach. The coach won't be doing walkthroughs. They won't be making sure teachers are doing things with fidelity. That's what the principal does. The
Right.
coach then does just works in the classroom with teachers and makes sure they feel successful.
Yeah. And Diane, you alluded to the visible learning research, and I'm sure you know, but the number one effect size is collective teacher efficacy. And to me, coaching, especially the model that you've established, is such a direct pathway to increase that, whether it's through mastery experiences the coaches helps you to have or through vicarious experiences. Tell me, has that been your experience? Is it really a tool and a pathway to increase that efficacy of a building?
Absolutely. And Jenny Donahue, who's written so much on collective teacher efficacy, and I have collaborated for years now, because she just brings such a beautiful um, opportunity to learn the research of like you just named, mastery experiences, vicarious experiences, affective states. Like that one is really interesting. Coaching should feel safe, right? It should lift your affective state, not diminish it.
Mm.
So all of that research on collective efficacy, and we celebrate like crazy in our model. Like anytime, um, at the end of a cycle, it's a celebration. Typically, it's how did kids grow? How did I grow? That's all rooted in the research on collective teacher efficacy. I love Jenny's new book on the 12 enemies of efficacy, and we've been really diving into those with teams of coaches also, so that they can navigate those predictable struggles when it comes to building efficacy.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that. I actually had a conversation with her this morning. She was one of our guests, and
Oh,
yeah, I have her book right in front of me, and you're right. She does such a great job of operationalizing and really making that visible learning research so concrete. And I think that your work
yep.
makes it that much more concrete, right? Because you take this idea
Mhm.
of increasing efficacy, and this is one direct pathway with which you can actually do it. Um, so you spoke a little bit about that relationship with the coach and the principal. And I've seen and I've personally experienced it go really well and also not so well. And one of the norming conversations that we always have, both when I was a coach and a principal, is, what is the right level of meeting and transparency, and what's your role versus my role? And oftentimes, if it feels like the coach is just the eyes and the ears of the principal who's going to come back and, for lack of a better word, snitch on what the teacher's doing, all of a sudden the doors start closing, and it becomes less of a welcoming
Yeah.
environment. What do you recommend that balance being, so there can be a collaboration between the two, but without making it seem like this is, the person who's lurking?
Yes. Oh gosh, I have a few thoughts. I won't go too long on this question, but one thing is that we take a very different stance than everybody else in the coaching world around confidentiality. You use the word transparency, but I think you were alluding to also maybe
Yes.
confidentiality. And the reason why is, and it's great for others to hold to that norm. That's fine. I'm not saying it's bad, but it doesn't work with our approach, because when you're trying to build collective efficacy, you have to be having those open conversations around what's working, what isn't working. And so if I were to say as a coach, I can't tell the principal anything about that's happening in the coaching work, well, that's going to limit our opportunity to for the principal to say, "Oh my gosh, I heard you did this awesome thing with the coach."
Right.
And so we like to think about it more as having asset-based conversations around teachers. So we never would want a coach and principal to sit and just negatively talk about teachers. Of course, we'd want to have conversations that are really well normed around, oh, this is what we're working on in this class, and this is the growth we're seeing, and this is some of the challenges we're having. Things you could say if the teacher was in the room. So that's one way we kind of buffer a little bit. And then another way, as I've already mentioned it, and I'm kind of like a dog on the bone on this, and I get a fair amount of pushback, but the importance of principals being in classrooms.
Mm.
And I know they're busy, but if they're not in classrooms, um, they can, and I don't mean big elaborate visits. I mean high frequency, low effort, a quick conversation afterwards with the teacher, um, fanning out to a school so you're in classrooms of all teachers, not just the ones who make you happy. um, but without that, then the coach becomes super vulnerable because then it looks like if something goes down with a teacher and the coach was working and the principal was never in that room, of course people are going to start connecting the dots. So I wouldn't say to be in classrooms just to protect the coach for principals, but I would say for the whole culture to grow around instruction and coaching, we just have to find ways into classrooms. And it's even if it's just 3 a day, get in for 10 minutes. That's 30 minutes a day, and make that happen. And I see you smiling. I'm guessing you were the kind of principal who was in classrooms a lot. Am I
Oh my
right?
gosh. Every classroom every day is always the goal. And it's like you said, it's
Wow.
micro visits. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
even 10, 15, 20 minutes. It's not always leaving a note. It's not always even following up with
Yep.
with an email, but it's just being in and saying hi to the kids and sitting down for a minute. If I have
Yes.
emails to do, sitting down and taking care of some emails, not even being there for the teacher, just being amongst kids. And like you
Yes.
said, that's the only way you can be an instructional leader is actually to be enmeshed and immersed in the learning.
In the instruction. Yeah.
Yeah.
One last thought on this too is we recommend principals and coaches meet if they can weekly. Sometimes it's every other week. And we use an agenda where the coach shares their coaching work for 10 or so minutes. This is who I'm working with, this is what who's lined up for the next round of cycles, etc. And then the principal shares the trends they're seeing in classrooms. Oh, I'm noticing that kids are struggling with this thing, or this piece of our new curriculum is wonky and hard, and so it's just sort of, this is my insight, and then a little planning between the two of them. It's a 30-minute conversation, and it's just really important for that to happen. We we it's just so beautiful when you see it happen because it's like the coach and principal are a team.
Yeah. And I think that the kind of symphony of unity is beautiful, but it's also rare, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
many schools don't even have coaches, right? It's,
Yeah.
ESSER funds, everyone has one. Now all of a
Yeah.
sudden budgets go down and it's not a reality everywhere. How do you still keep the core tenets of feedback and coaching even if you don't have an instructional coach in your
Mhm.
building? Do you leverage the principal? Do you leverage other specialists? Do you kind of distribute the leadership amongst teacher leaders? How would you
Mhm.
recommend that?
Yeah, this is always heartbreaking, right? But I have heard principals ask me this question, can I also be a coach? And I would say the way a principal can be a coach isn't a coaching cycle. That would not probably be realistic. I think a principal could be a coach by providing strengths-based feedback to teachers. Here's what this is what I'm seeing. Tell me more about that. Let's talk. Let's get some new possibilities going, and just having, and we write a lot about strengths-based feedback if anybody's curious about it, but really just having those really rich conversations with teachers, using evidence as much as possible, student evidence from the classroom. I was in the room, I heard this, I saw that. So that's I think realistic for principals. I've been working in some systems, actually in a school in Australia, as well as the whole state of Alabama, to develop peer coaching framework using that's student centered in its essence. So in that case, it could be a pair of teachers who are working a unit together, looking at student evidence together, using whatever resources this district has. That's been quite interesting. Alabama has um, state law for literacy and numeracy coaches. Their literacy coaches are only up to grade 3 and then no coaching. So they're using that for the years beyond grade 3 to really create systems for coaching in their schools. Peer coaching is tricky. You need resources to get teachers together. You need time, but I think it's a good strategy. It's kind of exciting and it's something new I've been working on recently.
And what has the model been? Is it pairing up teachers, it's like in the classroom by choice, or does the principal pair them up, or are there lab classrooms, or
Mm.
what's the model that you recommend?
Well, what I can just say what we've been doing in Australia, it's pairs, and same in Alabama. It's funny that this is international, but pairs like a teammate of mine, somebody teaching the same curriculum,
Yeah.
and I haven't it's just been essentially like everyone does this. In Australia, it was like we all do this. This is who's your partner going to be? It wasn't certain people do this work because in that case, the principal was very committed to building a culture for coaching and he didn't have a coach.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I think it could look a lot of different ways. I'd say the things to keep in mind would be using student evidence whenever co-planning together and really doing that front end work. What's our goal? Make it standards based. We want our students to learn what? Unpack that goal into the success criteria so we get clear. Teach into that, meet regularly, checking our student evidence. I think that alone would be a great way to for a school without a coach to kind of jump in.
Yeah, and have you ever seen, whether it's a school because of the culture and climate, or because of obstacles or external factors, or even for individual teachers, um, scenarios where coaching just isn't the right tool, where it isn't working for whatever reason, and you recommend pivoting away from it for that
Mm.
situation?
Yeah, it can be really hard when a principal isn't on board with coaching, when they're assigning a coach to do everything but coach, when they really just want that coach to be an AP. We've had to pull out coaches from systems where that's happening. We have a big emphasis on collecting evidence of impact for your coaching cycles. So, real quick, when we're supporting implementation, we can see, unless somebody's fudging, but educators don't do that typically. So, we can see there's nothing happening here in this school. What is breaking down? So, a lot of the time, it's what is the coach being asked to do? And I think also just giving it can break down if we don't have skilled coaches, right? I mean,
Mhm.
obviously we have to invest. We get, I talk to school districts every week who say we have coaches and no framework. We have coaches and they're all doing whatever they want to do. So I wouldn't say I'd pull the plug on that situation. I'd just say we need more support for the coaches.
Yeah, that's my wondering related to that is, when you see it not going so well, is it usually because of a philosophical, misalignment, or is it because of just the reality of, this particular school, our needs are so great and the principal doesn't have an assistant principal, so they need this person to fill in that role? Is it often a philosophical thing or just a pragmatic problem?
I mean, it can be either, right? It could certainly be. It could be that the culture of the school is resistant and they're just all ganging up to push away because they want reading specialists or interventionists or somebody. I think it can be any of those things. The philosophical different, like when a principal doesn't understand student centered coaching, that means we didn't do our job helping them understand the power of it, the why for student centered coaching. It means sometimes some unlearning has to happen with this is what I always thought coaching was, this very teacher centered, fixed teachers process. And now I have to trust that this other way to do it is worth giving a 100% try. And then again, we're collecting evidence of impact. So I think it can be philosophical, it can be logistics. I think schools with a lot of needs deserve a coach, though. It just, we have to get everyone at the table and help them understand, what does it look like? Why does it matter? And that's our work in districts really, is just helping implementation go well. We also do a lot of consultancies at school sites where we'd sit down with the principal, the coach, the district person, and just say, how's this going? Where are the breakdowns? We kind of go in expecting there's going to be challenges, right? In every school. It's just, what are they? How are we going to move past them?
Yeah. And Diane, I want to be respectful of your time. So the last
Sure.
question that I have for you
Okay.
is just for a practicing principal, what's one piece of advice that you would give?
Oh my gosh. I guess I'd say really understand the role of the coach if you have one. I'm just going to speak because we work in systems with coaches. So I'm just going to just narrow it down to that. And I just think build that vision, get clear with your staff about what do you want instructionally to happen in classrooms. It's hard to be a teacher in a school where there's no clear vision. You're wondering, what am I supposed to be doing? How am you just go, oh, I guess I'll use the curriculum and I don't know. Really, that vision on instruction, that is so vital in a school. So build that, support the coach to help. I just think it's about all being on the same team and trusting teachers and trusting your coach and trusting the coaching process. I
Uh,
guess that's what I'd say.
Awesome. I love that advice.
Yeah,
Diane, if
thank
people
you.
wanted to connect with you, I know you mentioned a lot of articles that you have and some
Yeah.
consulting work that you do. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, it's just dianesweeney.com. So super easy. And we have all kinds of resources there. We have blogs and a podcast ourselves. We interviewed Jenny and Glenn Forbes on their new book. So yeah, there's plenty there to just explore.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
We
Tom.
appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Tom.